Awesome. Thank you so much. And we're going to keep it right on rolling on, talking about getting cost data right, approaches and methodology for accurate ROI and ROAS. I'd like to welcome on stage Michael Paxman. Please give him a warm round of applause.
I'll go first. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, how are we doing? Are we happy? Smile and nod. There's a lady there smiling but not nodding. I will get you by the end of the speech. My name is Michael Paxman. I am head of customer services for our APAC region, based in our Tokyo office. I know what you're thinking. This 6'2" white guy's wandering around Tokyo trying to sell attribution. That sounds pretty funny. It's not. It's terrifying. I'm going to introduce some lovely people, some of the greatest minds in the industry today, to talk about cost data. It's an exciting event for us all. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. So, ladies and gentlemen, please clap as the owners of these names join me on stage. Thank you also to whoever left your notes for me. Cheers. All right, please assemble yourselves as it feels appropriate. All right, great. So why don't we start opposite myself? A little bit about yourself, where you work, what you do, who you are, and if you can link it to nudes, extra points.
Well, that last part. I'm Eric Ma. I head up user acquisition at Scopely. We're a mobile games publisher out of Los Angeles. We work with a lot of big entertainment brands. You might know us from games like Walking Dead: Road to Survival, Yahtzee with Buddies, Wheel of Fortune, Free Play.
Great.
Fabien Pierre-Nicolas. So I work at Smart News. I'm French, so sorry for the accent in advance. We're actually a Japanese company. And the best way to define us, jokingly, is saying flipboard but profitable. The other alternative way to define us that's less controversial is saying it's about news aggregation and giving you the perspective from both sides. So if you install the app and you're a hardcore liberal in San Francisco, you will still see Fox News and Washington Examiner and be confronted to somebody else's opinion. But the goal is, this is how democracy works, right? Seeing both perspectives. And that's what we provide. In Japan, we're #1 news app across all the news apps, beating Yahoo News, and still big in Japan, and a lot of the competition. And in the US, we just recently started to scale.
This is supposed to be the nice panel. We're supposed to be scary in the fraud panel.
I'm in the wrong panel then.
All right, let's meet our next panelist.
I am Ashley Rankin. I'm Northern Irish, so sorry for that accent. I work at Fetch. I'm the head of media operations, so I look after our approved partner program and working with networks to get the best out of them for all of our clients.
Great.
I'm Kevin Young. I'm a senior manager of user acquisition at Kixeye. And we make online combat and strategy games, mostly for mobile, but we've got some desktop games as well. My function is primarily mobile.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, please clap once more to establish familiarity with my panel. OK, I'm going to jump into the questions in just one moment. But first, I would like a show of hands from the audience. Who here deals with cost data and has had a bad experience with it? Yeah, that's some class action right there. Yeah, we got a lot of. All right, great. Well, I have handpicked these, ladies and gentlemen, because they have horror stories about cost data. Horror stories. Someone opened Excel in 2017 this year. It's terrifying. So let's go to Eric first. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what you do with cost data, and are there any pain points?
Sure, yeah. So we work across, I think, a number of common channels, big social platforms, lots of ad networks, some direct deals we buy on Smart News. We have cost data coming in from a lot of different places. Once upon a time, this was an extremely manual process. We did stuff, in Excel ourselves. We've been a singular customer for the last couple years. I think that does a really good job for us from an aggregate standpoint of getting us kind of quick, very fast reads of how much total spend we have, what that looks like across some key attributes. I think now for us, some of the key pain points are really, the singular solution is kind of beholden to however good or bad our different vendors are. We have, we're looking for profitable acquisition wherever we can find it. We're fortunate enough to have a big enough team to sometimes exploit some smaller advertising opportunities, and what that sometimes comes with is not necessarily the most reliable or most well-informed cost information. So as a result, we have all this aggregate data, but one of the more interesting and compelling things would be to be able to break that down in more ways that we'd like. So I think now we don't necessarily have a problem that maybe a lot of people had in 2013 and 14, where they'd come into the office every day, and every day somebody was like running the cost data, because we are now past that point. But in terms of really getting advanced in how we think about our ROI, I think there's probably still room to go.
Great. Fabian?
Well, the horror story, I mean, first on the Japan side, I think we externalize that because the agency, when there is a channel where we don't have an API, essentially doing the job, so somebody manually is assembling every day spreadsheet for us, but it's external. Internally, when I started a few months ago in the US, we didn't have the luxury of just relying on external resources. And that was a pain point mostly because we rely on engagement. And so not having this cost at the user level means we're just looking at blended return on ad spend, which is truly not ideal, especially in some of the channels where you need the like Facebook, where we really do some micro-targeting on specific users who are really highly engaged. Mm-hmm. So for us, that was just painful from the team. And it's still not a problem that's solved. So going at the user level will be ultimately the best solution to get to true return on ad spend.
Cool. OK, Ashley, that we just heard Fabian maybe be slightly rude about agencies, I feel. Was there anything you'd like to add to the discussion?
Yeah, I mean, as an agency, we obviously work with a lot of networks. We work with a lot of channels, and we work with a lot of clients. So it's actually, for us, we get to see an awful lot of information, but we still don't have enough because it's not at the user level. It's totally right. We ask for transparency from all of our networks. We can see where we're running, but we don't know the performance of like that specific site within that specific network. And to get that kind of information, I think, would be a massive game changer.
Sure.
Yeah, so we've had sort of similar things to you guys. The first sort of like era of cost for us was pretty manual in the sense that someone's aggregating an Excel spreadsheet overnight or in the morning or what have you. And that that's a problem. It was a problem for a couple reasons. One, you've got the human element, which is like, how do I know this cost is right? Someone just entered this, like I'm not sure. Two, there's sort of like a labor restriction on it because say you're aggregating by day or by network or both, and you want to add by geo, by device, or something like that. Like each one of those parameters is like multiplicative on the permutations you've got in your cost and how you're looking at cost, right? So it quickly becomes like super complicated. And I think that sort of led us to what I would call like our sort of 2.0 era, which was the like early automation. So the bigger developers were building crawlers to go into these dashboards to pull everything in sort of the format and in the way that they want. And that's fine, but we went external. We also use Singular, use an external partner to sort of like programmatically match the cost side and the user side information to the best of their ability. But that's still a problem because on the network side, the nomenclature needs to be straight, and if it's not, then you still might be looking at ROAS or ROI incorrectly, depending on how you're slicing it. So my goal, and I think we're sort of there now, is like our 3.0. Will be like completely decoupling things on cost side and completely decoupling things on the user side and building like ground up ROAS, in a very granular sense. But the problem with that is that all these networks do things differently. Some can report cost by geo, some can't. Some can report cost by like density of the device pixels or something like that. So you end up sort of manually mapping those edge cases, and so ironically we're kind of back to square one in the sense that we're devoting people to manually directing costs somewhere.
And when you start bidding at the app level with some of the partners who have transparency, which they should all have at some point, but through API they don't pass you this level of details, then you're like, well, it's not very useful.
Right.
Now let me ask you as a group, please feel free to sort of fight over the attention of the audience. With the way cost data is now and how, let's say, semi-available it is, do you feel comfortable using it currently as it is in calculations when it comes to things like what to buy or which users to target, or perhaps what sort of changes to make to the app and so on? Like what level of trust do you feel you have currently with the cost data that you have available, be it through your own hacking or a third party at the moment?
Yeah, for me, it's inverse with how granular it is, I guess. Like if you're looking at US for one network, I'm pretty confident in that. You're looking at iPads and Russia on a random network, like I'm not,
Sure.
Yeah, I find it it's very usable within the prefab dimensions with which you've set things up, right? And I think that that's sort of like, when I think about kind of like a 2.0, 3.0 concept, that's what I think is the most missing. We have a lot of people here are combing through their user data in all kinds of interesting ways. There's lots of interesting properties by which, actually on some, channels, those are targetable dimensions, but cost is fundamentally limiting to that, right? So, a lot of you guys probably have campaigns like, oh, we have a US campaign at this price, and we have a Android Germany campaign at this price, and it's set up that way. And one big reason for that is because that's what cost might be available by, and then so there's not necessarily a reason to, or there's not an effective way to break down these other dimensions that you really care about, or actually that's specific for your applications would make a lot more sense. And so that limits the way you would set things up. And so a lot of people, ourselves included, have a lot of like stock dimensions that that we're targeting by. And the more granular you could get with cost, the less you'd have to do that, and the more value you could exploit.
I think the issue is like new channels, emerging channels like Apple Search Ads, right? When they ship an ad product, they don't necessarily think about building the API or making the data available at a very granular level. So you could be like, hey, for this specific keyword, this specific dimension, and so on. They were more like, let's build the front end so you could bid and start buying, and let's start making some money first. And I think it's the same for specific geos, right? Japan is a good case where you still have a lot of sources who don't have cost APIs available. So even if you have engineering support, you can't be like, hey, please integrate. So you still get like those ugly Excel reports in your mailbox every day.
Sure. Yeah.
I think for me, on the network side, it's so difficult to understand the performance of specific apps and sites within networks because you have network A, network B, network C. You pay, what, $3 or $4 CPI on each of them, and you're running across 500 sites and apps. And you have no idea at all which one of those is converting, which one of those is working. So I think there's an issue with that kind of model as well. I feel comfortable with Facebook data. I feel comfortable with Apple and Google before UAC, maybe. Sorry.
Is he still here?
But on the network side, I think there needs to be just so much more transparency, and that's something that we need to do as an industry, I think.
And Facebook could probably do some efforts on FAN, right? Because right now, FAN, there is clear quality issues, and it's a black box, and you're like, I would love to help them optimize, because the problem is right now they're just optimizing on CPM, right? But not on a return on ad spend. But the problem is right now, I can't. So by default, I think it generates a lower demand for the fan inventory. And as a fan publisher, I care.
Sure. Now, I want to ask something that's a little bit specific, but I feel like there may be some people in the audience who have yet to have this exciting experience. Could one of you please explain to me what happens when the naming of, for example, the naming convention on the network side and the naming convention on the adjust side or the attribution partner side is not the same? Do you know what happened? Wow, you've got great network.
Yeah, sure. That happens all the time. Yeah. I mean, back to what Kevin's talking about. I mean, you're limited to whatever the level of the hierarchy that things match on, right? And so if that's not a match, then I mean, you're looking at your total returns. You're defaulting to your user quality sort of in a vacuum, or you're manually putting together, the CPI of any given campaign by what your breakdown is, and you're just in Excel literally like entering data and then reconstructing a spreadsheet from scratch. I mean, there's when that mapping breaks down, I mean, that is frustrating.
Sure. If only some scrappy startup from Germany would solve it, or if only there was some sort of announcement coming, but there isn't. But speaking of that, and I want to go a little bit more positive here, because I do feel like a distinctly thick and heavy melancholy has spread across the room. If maybe in 16 minutes and 28 seconds, the young and handsome and my boss, Paul Muller, walked onto this stage and offered some sort of solution, which is definitely not a spoiler, and user cost, and we managed to solve all these problems. How would you guys use this? Let's pretend it's perfect, one-to-one, brilliant cost per user, let's say. Yeah? Nailed it. How would you use that? How would that affect your buying strategies? How would that affect your app strategies overall?
Well, I will turn to Paul and I will be like, great, you guys have the cost side, figured out about like the revenue side, mostly ad revenue, and if you add that, then it's perfect.
Oh man.
Oh, I'm French, I always
don't clap. That's Mobile Spree 18, maybe. Let's go to somebody who I've already teed up a good answer from. Kevin, why don't you jump in?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, for one, I think we'd have a lot more work as UA managers to get insight at that level. Be like, oh wow, that was not performing how we thought once you split it by user. But yeah, I mean, I would love to have that if there was some sort of like primary key to connect everything together on cost and on user side.
Oh, I mean, I think, from our perspective, I think there's a lot we could automate if data was available at a user level. I mean, this may sound like relatively tame, but we'll run on an ad network and we'll have a run a network campaign, and that'll exist across a number of countries. The campaign is broken up. There's all kinds of different campaigns, right, for these different countries. Those campaigns comprise all kinds of sub-publishers and placements within that. Like something looks bad in this U.S. For this placement in the US, right? Does that mean you should blacklist that publisher across all these other countries that have a really small sample size, because maybe in Switzerland we've only acquired 22 installs from that publisher, right? Like you wouldn't have to think about things in that way, really. You could recombine all of your data by whatever metric that you wanted and automate the what you told your networks to do or what you programmatically had your networks do as a result. And so it opens up a lot more, I think. I think we as a company, we need to invest technologically behind that to really make that work, and we'd also need to unpack the data to find out where the value is. I think in some ways, when you don't have that data at that level, you don't even know necessarily like where are like the real gold mines within that. So there's some exploration to be done, and there's some tech to build behind that, but there's a lot of cool things you could do where you wouldn't have to keep scaling your team by hiring and hiring and hiring every time.
I think you could really focus your UA team and engineering team on solving real problems, right? To your point, like programmatically saying, okay, those type of users and generate insights, right? Saying those device types don't work, those countries and so on, those dimensions, a lot more quickly instead of focusing on just piecing data together and doing spreadsheet work and so on, which is not fun, or for engineers, integrating API, which isn't fun either.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
How about from the agency side? What would be the way that you sort of approach this, let's say, next generation of cost availability?
I mean, I think for us, for the agency side, I mean, we ask for data all the time. The more information, the more data we can get, the better we can do. Any clients that we work with, as much as they share with us on their LTV and on their return on ad spend and that kind of stuff, is the better job we can do. I think this offers like a really unique kind of opportunity for us as well, because we work across so many different verticals. We have clients in travel, entertainment, gaming, like we have, and to be able to get the information at a user level from all of that, and then be able to make decisions based on that for future campaigns and future clients, I think that would be awesome for us. Yeah, I think we would use as much of that as possible.
Cool, excellent. Okay, these four lovely people here, 3 of them working for app development and an agency, but let's pretend that we work for networks. Now, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be allowed in the door. Kidding. But how do you feel if this was to happen today, for example, how do you feel the atmosphere of the industry as a whole is going to shift? What do you think of the ramifications of this sort of change, at large?
Well, I would say, one of the resistors for me on the advertiser side from starting tests with new networks is if they're going to send me like a CSV of spend, at this point I'm kind of like, it's not even worth my time, So I think it would help discovery in a lot of ways. Like if there's a great new ad network out there that's developing like a very healthy list of publishers in their portfolio, and they've got a spend thing that's very easy for me to plug into, then I don't really see, there's no sort of frictional cost with running a test there.
Sure.
I mean, from my side, I think it's probably going to separate the wheat from the chaff, right? Like, we have very specific criteria that we have for partners that we want to work with, and I think something like this could actually, go on our approval list. Like, we won't work with you unless you give us this information.
You won't work with them unless they integrate a hypothetical COS Theta API. Did you get that, Twitter team? Yeah. Get that stuff out there right now. Great. Guys?
No, I think that's a key point, right? For me, there is like transparency is very important. If you're not Facebook, Google, a trustworthy partner by default, right? Then giving me app transparency is important. Getting the cost data back easily, and ensuring that essentially there is enough back and forth and support that it's not like we have campaign and it's really hard to reach out to those partners. It's probably like 3 or 4 criteria, and the last part is legal terms, right? Having a lot of things about fraud and how we're not going to pay for fraudulent traffic as part of the contract. So if you are not meeting those criteria, I think you don't deliver the cost well, or you don't include some clause in the contract, I probably won't test you because it's not worth my time.
So there's a bit more protection for you guys in the inventory that you buy.
And there is enough inventory out there outside of the partners who don't want to play this game to not worry.
I don't think I have anything on top of that in terms of the
Good,
advertising.
you did a great job, guys. Yeah. Would you gentlemen join Ashley's sort of approach that maybe after a certain amount of time, it would become a requirement for you to buy inventory from a network only if they provided cost data? Do you feel that's something that you would be insistent on or considering?
I mean, yeah, for me, it pretty much already is the case. At least, like, if you can't provide this, this, and this granularity, then like it's not going to work with what we've built, like in-house in our BI stack. So we have plenty of other options, kind of thing.
Sure.
So yeah, we're already kind of there.
I mean, it's all or nothing, right? Like you need to. We need our people to commit to a certain form of optimization. We need our machines to commit to a certain form of optimization. It kind of can't be like, hey, on this 30% of stuff, like, we take in an Excel file, and here's what we do over here, and then, over here, this is this automated system on the rest. I mean, we're going down one lane in full, right? Mm-hmm. Because this is the gathering and like formatting of this data is not like core, business value for what our people do, right? And so it needs to be whatever we do needs to be a complete solution.
Cool.
Yeah, no.
Guys? Yeah. You agree?
Yeah.
Excellent. That's what I wanted. OK. Well, we've just got a little bit of time left. I wanted to talk a little bit with the audience and see if they had any queries or questions. So let's throw it over to them. Don't all shout at once. Guys, just, I don't know, complain about how cold the room is or something if you want. No? All right, fine. Let's talk. Oh, what a superstar. Sorry, I almost missed you there. My apologies.
I was going to just chime back in on getting the ad revenue rolled in.
Get in there.
Yeah.
Oh, no, don't do that. What are you talking about?
I'm the one that clapped.
Well, OK, well, I think...
How many more people in the room are interested to get
It's just you two, and you ain't going to be in this room for much longer. Building off that, then, so if we have ad spend available, then the next thing is this oft-requested feature. What exactly would you do with it? Let's go hypothetical here. I think this may be my last day in this company now, so we might as well talk about it. What exactly would you be doing there?
Well, I think the real upside is the next step will be essentially allowing us within Adjust to set up some rules and do some of the automation within the platform, right? You get your costs on one end, you get your revenue on the other end, and finally, you programmatically like shut down specific users' campaigns and dimensions based on certain rules. And if within X days I don't have this specific return on ad spend, then you could shut down the campaign. And again, that will allow us to focus on higher value tasks and allow the teams to focus on higher value tasks rather than just collecting the data and then making decisions more manually.
Sure.
I think as a market, we've moved a little bit towards. There's actually an underinvestment, I think, in some ways, of a pool of people who are highly active, engaged mobile people, and that's largely because that pool of people doesn't make a lot of in-app purchases. And that's not true of everyone here who's here in the room, but for a lot of us, in-app purchases are a huge driver for our businesses, and that's what we focus on. And because it's easy to pass back, that's what we optimize to. And I think there's a lot of value potentially people who are really engaged and who actually aren't seeing the same deluge of advertising that a smaller handful of high in-app purchasers are doing.
Sure.
Yeah, I think for us it would allow us to kind of move past the install and first action. We want to look at true LTV. We want to look at the funnel. We want to look at the user, the entire journey. And I think we really need to move away from this kind of first action. And I think that would allow us to be able to do that.
I think they pretty much covered it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Teamwork. OK, no more questions. Kia? Is it about ad spend? Go for it. So let's get the microphone over to you.
I was going to ask, because we haven't really broached the subject of re-engagement yet as it relates to this topic. So how would user level cost, would it possibly impact your re-engagement campaigns? And if so, how does that come into play?
You're talking about like audience building and so on?
Well, that's a piece of it. But if you can tie ROI down to a specific set of users, how does that improve your re-engagement strategy?
What a great question. What a great sales guy. All right. It's the nicest thing I've ever said to him.
I mean, I think it's actually a great question for those of you who are here who run e-commerce and travel fashion kind of applications. Like right now, So we don't do a huge amount of re-engaging in gaming, but the use case you're describing is absolutely a huge problem, right? Because we don't have like a total lifetime cost put into a certain user and a total lifetime revenue achieved by that user. Instead, what we have is this separate re-engagement campaign, which is you can kind of look at it on isolation or run lift tests, but you're not really tying that back to any totals. Then subsequently, when you look at returns by original cohort, like, does that make sense? I mean, you've contributed more re-engagement money into those same people to try to lift up their spend. I think for people who have a high percentage of, or any meaningful percentage of spend on re-engagement, it could make a really big difference.
Yeah. Yeah, my experience is much the same, at least in games. We're re-engaging people. It's pretty small scale. It's the freemium model after all. But most of that value that we're buying on and comparing that with ROI is like crafted after the install and like after cost. I mean, there's like, I imagine we could get a little bit crazier in terms of how we're slicing stuff. But yeah, I imagine it'd be tremendous for e-commerce.
Great. OK, we have a little bit of time left, so I'd like to sort of go around and have any closing comments, anything you'd like to add to the discussion. This look of fear in your eyes tell me there is nothing you want to add to the discussion, so I'll do you last. Let's start with Eric.
Like this is like a closing
Wrap it, take it home for me.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is like, I mean, once you get past a certain scale, I think there's actually like a sort of a luxury sort of actually to only be investing on Facebook, maybe Facebook plus Google. Once your business is at a scale where you're looking for acquisition and advertising beyond that, cost data, I think rapidly becomes a problem. It's always difficult, I think, for everyone to, on some level. We're always looking for the right solution for that. Anyone who's advancing the ball forward in terms of a new solution is obviously something we're going to evaluate closely and see if we should invest in.
And for me, closing statement is I was, I think, the first or second paying clients for Singular in North America. Is I think you guys are doing the right thing. Adjust is, avoiding having us to subscribe to 2 or 3 services, rather work with one platform as a key partner in the space. So hopefully we hear some big news from Paul right after. And I think it's always a good news when you don't have to deal with too many software as a service partners overall. So.
Cool.
I'm sick of dealing with costs. Somebody fix it.
Maybe we can do that. Who knows?
Yeah, I think for us, it would be great to get our data team doing a lot more high-level analysis and doing a lot more LTV analysis. So that would cost data would be great to have. Great.
All right, well, Paul's just off the stage looking quite angry. So I will say thank you very much, guys. Can we have one last round of applause for these lovely people? Look at them. Beautiful, each in their own way. That's it. Thanks very much, guys. Cheers. Enjoy the rest of your day.